From inner city Detroit to the nation's head of housing, what Dr. Ben Carson hopes to accomplish, plus one woman's fight to end homelessness. A cure for Alzheimer's? An end to cancer? How the 21st Century Cures Act could change the world.
We have to remember that we are in this together.
Our Divided Country, my one-on-one interview with the new Bishop of Arlington, Virginia, on his plans for healing it. Plus, the Pope urges business leaders to develop a global economic system for the poor. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, December 5th, 2016. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Donald Trump chooses retired neurosurgeon and former presidential candidate Ben Carson. He'll be the Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. He will lead an agency of more than 8,000 employees with the mission of providing quality, affordable housing for all. Earlier denials aside, this one to me at the Republican National Convention. Do you hope to have some sort of role in the administration?
I would prefer to work from outside the administration.
Surprising many in the political world, Dr. Ben Carson says yes to Trump. Trump tweeted that he was thrilled. Vice President Mike Pence added his praise.
Excited to have Dr. Carson as our intended nominee for Housing and Urban Development.
Carson responded in kind to Trump on Twitter, saying he was honored to accept the opportunity. He has been both a loyal and critical supporter, in the past conceding Trump had major defects. Carson himself has had an unconventional path to politics. The son of a single mother in inner-city Detroit, he went on to become the first African-American head of pediatric neurosurgery at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. His rise to political prominence began in 2013 at the National Prayer Breakfast, when just feet from President Obama, he criticized the welfare state and the nation's overall direction. When running for president this year, he gained traction for his inspirational life story, anti-establishment message, and Christian faith. A faith, he says, Trump shares.
He is a man who actually believes in the founding principles of this country, the Judeo-Christian principles of this country. Believe it or not, he is a man who actually prays.
Carson, an outside-the-box choice, will have to be confirmed by the Senate. It's expected that retired Marine Corps General James Mattis will be nominated as Secretary of Defense tomorrow during the next stop of Trump's Thank You America tour in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Speaker Paul Ryan says he's patched up his relationship with Donald Trump, and now the two talk on the phone almost every day. But in a 60 Minutes interview yesterday, Ryan admits he was surprised by the president-elect's rise to power.
Did you believe he could be nominated? Really?
Yeah, no, I didn't see this one coming. He knows that. Donald Trump's he was a very unconventional candidate. He's going to be an unconventional president. What I like about it in my, like I said, almost daily conversations is he's just a get things done kind of guy.
Ryan says Trump wants to reset the balance of power between Congress and the presidency, something he thinks President Obama took away. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi denies the Democratic Party needs to go in a new direction, even though they lost the presidential election. Pelosi told CBS, quote, "I don't think people want a new direction. Our values unify us, and our values are about supporting America's working families." She says the Democratic Party just needs to improve its message. Nearly 4 weeks after Election Day, North Carolina finally has a governor-elect after a tight race. Current Governor Pat McCrory conceded the race today, clearing the way for Democrat Roy Cooper to be the declared winner. McCrory faced backlash in North Carolina and around the country for signing the bill for transgender people to use the restroom, corresponding to the gender on their birth certificate. And the Michigan recount is underway. A federal judge issued an order early today for election officials to start counting presidential ballots. The ruling follows a request from Green Party candidate Jill Stein. President-elect Donald Trump won Michigan by about 10,000 votes. The Senate debates the 21st Century Cures Act. It's a bipartisan bill that the president says could end cancer as we know it. Jason Calvi is at the White House with our report. Jason?
Lauren, Vice President Joe Biden is the president of the Senate, but it's very, very rare for him to go to Capitol Hill and preside over that chamber. For him, though, it's personal. A year and a half ago, Biden's son Beau died of cancer, and now Biden could watch as the Senate says yes to what's called the cancer moonshot.
President Obama makes a last pitch to the American people.
There's a bill in Congress that could help unlock a cure for Alzheimer's, end cancer as we know it, and help people seeking treatment for opioid addiction finally get the help they need.
Tonight, the Senate has a procedural vote on that bill, the 21st Century Cures Act. It's backed by Republicans and Democrats. Work launched by President Obama at the State of the Union.
For the loved ones we've all lost, for the families that we can still save, let's make America the country that cures cancer once and for all. What do you say, John?
Something Missouri Republican Ann Wagner wants to see.
My family's been touched by all of these things, from heart disease to breast cancer, and to be able to do something positive.
The bill would pump $4.8 billion into life-saving research at the National Institutes of Health, and it would allow for quicker federal approval of drugs and medical devices. But that worries Connecticut Democrat Rosa DeLauro.
These are life and death issues. People die if a device goes wrong.
She was one of 26 in the House to vote against the bill last week, while 392 voted for it. The 996-page bill also pumps $1 billion into opioid abuse prevention and treatment, and it also includes what psychiatrist and Congressman Tim Murphy says will beef up mental health treatment.
We work to get more psychiatrists, more psychologists, more telemedicine to help provide services in rural areas, because half the counties in America have no psychiatrists or psychologists.
Representative Murphy says the Sandy Hook shooting 4 years ago inspired his work to push for mental health reform. Lauren?
Well, Jason, if it passes, what's next?
Well, President Obama says he will sign the 21st Century Cures Act as soon as it passes his desk. It will then become law, and the billions will go over to NIH over the course of the next decade.
What will Vice President Biden's involvement be? He'll be long gone from the administration.
Well, the vice president, we know, has been working behind the scenes with Congress to make sure that this bill gets passed, and we're looking forward to that, or they're looking forward to that this week. The cancer moonshot passed the House last week, and then looking forward to it to pass the Senate this week. And we know that the Vice President Biden is promising to remain on this issue even after he leaves the White House. Lauren?
Jason Calvi reporting from the White House. Thank you very much. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. A fire in Oakland, California kills at least 36 people, and investigators expect that number to rise. The fire broke out Friday night during a dance party in a building where many artists reportedly live illegally. The warehouse was under investigation for code violations, including the lack of sprinklers. Investigators think the fire started right under the dance floor. One survivor says he had to leave his friend behind to save his own life.
The fire was just getting too hot, and the smoke was just getting too bad, and I had to leave him there, and I wasn't able to get him out.
Got out the building, and I just saw smoke and then flames coming out the doors and the windows.
It could take weeks to identify those killed. The sheriff's office is asking families of potential victims to save hairbrushes and toothbrushes for DNA comparisons. A win for Dakota Access Pipeline protesters. The Army Corps of Engineers denied a permit for the pipeline to be built under a lake. The Corps said the developers now need to look into alternative routes. Protesters have been trying to stop the pipeline construction for months. They said the project would hurt the environment and destroy ancient Native American sites. Italy's president is urging calm in the political crisis triggered by Premier Matteo Renzi's resignation. That's after a resounding defeat on a referendum about reforms. Wyatt Goolsbee joins us now to tell us about what impact this could have on the rest of Europe.
Yeah, Lauren, European leaders are still trying to gauge the long-term impact of this no vote, but Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi staked his political career basically on this referendum, which is essentially about reforming the Constitution.
Non sono riuscito a portarvi alla vittoria.
Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi concedes defeat, telling his supporters, "I was not able to lead you to victory." Renzi spearheaded the campaign for constitutional reforms, which he said would help revive the country's economy. But the no votes won by a 6-4 margin.
Abbiamo vinto. È stata una cosa giusta.
This Rome resident is happy, saying his no vote was a vote for change.
Siamo molto bravi a coalizzarci quando si tratta di...
This woman is less optimistic. She says Italians will have to wait for another opportunity, which may never come. Renzi had been hoping to beat off rising anti-establishment forces that have gained traction across Europe. That includes the opposition Five Star Movement. That party wants Italy to vote on leaving the European Union, like Britain did in June. But European Union officials are downplaying the comparison.
We think that the referendum in Italy was about a change to the Italian constitution, not about Europe.
The EU is pointing to the presidential election results in Austria as a sign of hope. A left-leaning candidate prevailed over a right-wing populist, reaffirming the country's link with Europe, according to EU officials. Mainstream politicians in Germany are congratulating its neighbors on the election. Many there are worried more anti-EU victories could cause widespread political and economic instability. The NATO Secretary General says Italy's position, regardless of the referendum result, will not change. They say that Italy remains a key military ally. Lauren?
And part of NATO, is that right?
Absolutely.
Now, what do you think? Is it going to leave the EU? We heard someone say, no, it's not. That's not going to happen.
We're not there at this point, no. It's a possibility, but they're still considering it. If they do, it would be a big blow. At least a lot of people are considering it to be a big blow to their economy because they could potentially default on at least some of their debt. If they leave the EU, they could potentially leave the euro currency, and no country's ever done that before.
All right, Wyatt Goolsby, thank you very much. Mary Shevlin, our eyes and ears in Rome, joins us. Mary, what's next in Italy?
Matteo Renzi received a crushing defeat for his referendum, and as promised, he said he would resign. Now, he went to visit with the president of Italy this morning for about an hour, then went back to meet with his cabinet. He's expected to meet with the president of Italy later today to formally offer his resignation. It's up in the air whether President Mattarella will accept that resignation. There are so many scenarios here, Lauren. The president of Italy could ask him to stay on and finish his mandate with sort of a reformed government, or he could accept Renzi's resignation and appoint a sort of caretaker government. Many people saying Italy's finance minister could very well fill that role and also kind of tranquilize and allay the fears of many of the European banks that are watching this current turmoil. So we could have a caretaker government, or the long shot scenario are snap elections, which many experts are saying is very unlikely to happen, which would of course lead to the rise of the very anti-Renzi political parties in that case.
Observers think there's a chance that Italy could even end up ditching the euro. How bad would that be?
Lauren, no member of the European Union yet has left the currency. Britain left the Union, but they were never signed on for the currency. So they would be the first ones to do so if they decided to, say, ditch the euro. But many experts watching that said if they did, it would dwarf the scandal and the uprise that we saw in Greece just last year. Remember all the chaos that ensued when Greece was teetering on leaving the euro. They said if Italy did that, it would again dwarf that chaos and the repercussions in the third largest economy here in the Eurozone would be devastating. So we'll have to watch and see if Italy votes in that direction to leave the European currency.
Our Rome producer, Mary Shevlin, joining us from St. Peter's Square. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you, Lauren.
Coming up, my one-on-one interview with the next Bishop of Arlington, Virginia, his guide for politicians, and the Holy Father's message during this morning's homily, what Pope Francis says about the renewal the Lord brings. Pope Francis focuses on the renewal the Lord brings. During his homily this morning at the residence at the Vatican, the Holy Father says we should give our sins to God and that He can transform us and make us new women and men. The Arlington Diocese is less than 24 hours away from getting a new bishop, and today I sat down with Bishop Michael Burbidge to discuss his role as a peacemaker and his message for Catholics coping with controversy. You are coming into a big transition time here in Washington as President-elect Donald Trump is about to take over the presidency. And this nation and this country, this city in particular, where you are right outside the city of Washington, is so divided. How do you plan to make that division decrease?
Yes, in fact, I'm speaking on that theme tonight at our evening prayer, the theme of transition. And transition is not always easy in our lives. And certainly, as you mentioned, we are experiencing transition in our country, and there is that divide. But what I'm saying tonight is the fact that we have to remember that we are in this together. We are God's family, we are brothers and sisters, we are fellow citizens, and we all share a responsibility in contributing to the common good, and that goes for every citizen in this country. So I will speak often about the need for us to listen to one another, as our Holy Father, Pope Francis, always reminds us. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to be passionate in our disagreements even, but always with respect.
And what does that look like?
It looks like accepting others where they are, never compromising who you are, never compromising your beliefs, and stand strong in them. But the fact is that people are not always going to be sharing the same position. So that doesn't mean you dismiss them.
Including Catholics.
Exactly. It doesn't mean you label them. It doesn't mean you distance yourself from them. You have to find a way to engage.
You have had a rocky road in Raleigh. Your last diocese in North Carolina, which has been dealing with a controversial law regarding bathroom access for transgender people. And these issues are becoming more prevalent all across the country. What are the principles that should guide Catholics on this issue?
Yes. So the first principle is that God has created us in His own image and likeness. And God has created us man and woman, male and female. And that's beautiful. That's part of our dignity, and that should always be respected. And at the same time, we know that there are certain circumstances in life where people need special attention. And so I think there's a way, and that's what I was encouraging our elected officials in North Carolina to understand, that we have to recognize and celebrate the fact that we are man and woman and be respected as that.
I'll continue my conversation with Bishop Burbidge tomorrow, and that's the day of his installation. He will tell us then how Pope Francis inspires him. EWTN will broadcast that installation mass tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. It's part of the network's Cathedrals Across America program. Chad Pecknold, Associate Professor of Theology at the Catholic University of America, joins us now. Hi, Chad. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
We heard him talk about the words that Pope Francis often uses, learning more the true meaning of dialogue. Mm-hmm. As a leader of the diocese right next to Washington, what do you think he can do to help cultivate a more civil dialogue?
Well, you noticed he led with theological principles right out of the gate when you asked him. You know, when you ask Bishop Burbidge, what's the most important thing for dialogue? Well, that we're created in God's image. You know, that we respect the dignity of every human being, and that we respect that every human being's made for freedom, that we're made for freedom for the truth, and that means the freedom to be patient with dialogue and patient with disagreements.
He was also auxiliary bishop in Philadelphia. Do you think that his experience in a more urban diocese is going to help him and be useful to being a pastor to Catholics here?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Raleigh's not a small town, but he's had experience. He's from Philadelphia, he's from a big city, he's got lots of experience in an urban center with, as you say, a diverse population. I think he'll feel right at home in Arlington.
He has also been involved in Catholic education as a high school teacher and a dean of students. Do you think that experience is going to help him? What will his approach be to teaching the faith?
Well, I mean, he's an academic on one level. He's got his master's degree, he's got his doctorate in education administration, he's been the rector of a seminary, he's on the board of trustees at the Catholic University of America. So here's a man who's got really deep academic instincts, but he's also a man who's always after catechesis, he's after good formation, he's after vocations, he wants to form the next generation of preachers and priests. I think education is going to run deep in the Arlington Diocese under Bishop Burbidge.
Okay, thank you, Chad Pecknold and Catholic University of America. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Up next, how the White House and Japan are healing decades-long wounds. And the final farewell for Fidel Castro. We'll show you parts of his 3-minute funeral. Pope Francis says we need to prepare spiritually for Christmas. The Holy Father spoke yesterday on the second Sunday of Advent and said we should examine our conscience and confess our sins during reconciliation. The Pope says heaven isn't just a place in the afterlife, but also the good news Jesus brings us. Cubans hold a final farewell for their late leader, Fidel Castro. Current President Raul Castro placed a wooden box containing his older brother's ashes into a granite boulder. Yesterday's ceremony in Santiago was private and lasted only 3 minutes. The funeral wrapped up 9 days of mourning in the communist country. History will be made later this month when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe becomes the first sitting Japanese leader to visit Pearl Harbor. Abe will meet with President Obama in Honolulu on December 27th. The news comes 2 days before the 75th anniversary of Pearl Harbor, the Pearl Harbor attack, which propelled the United States into World War II. Pope Francis discusses the need for a global economic system that helps the poor. The Holy Father met with Fortune 500 CEOs as well as academic, religious, and labor leaders during a 2-day forum in Rome. The Pope encouraged them to always promote the dignity of the human person. You can get more on this story right now at CatholicNewsAgency.com. Well, by turning ideas into action, the founder of a nonprofit to help the homeless earned distinction as a White House champion of change. Nellie Vasquez Rowland, president and co-founder of A Safe Haven, joins us. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me, Lauren.
Tell us about Safe Haven. What are the services that they provide, and how is your approach different?
Oh, well, A Safe Haven was founded by my husband and I, who's a military veteran, by the way, 22 years ago, with the idea of solving poverty and helping people get back into the mainstream with jobs and permanent housing.
So you grew up in Chicago in a largely Latino neighborhood known for its crime and violence, right? And how did that experience shape your life? Did that drive you to do this?
Well, it did, but not right away, okay? I think that the seed was planted having grown up in that type of environment. But I went to a Jesuit university at Loyola University, and we learned a lot about, doing well by doing good throughout school. And then I went on to build a career in finance along with my husband. And after our success, we decided to start investing and giving back and making a difference. And poverty spoke to us. And that was something that we felt very strongly about. But we weren't happy with the way the system was set up, so we decided to create our own.
You were an investment banker, right?
That's right.
And
for 13 years.
Right. So you left.
Yes.
Main Street, Wall Street to just turn your life over to service. What advice would you give to other people thinking about doing that?
Well, the idea of doing well and doing good really resonated with us, and it really felt good to see that we had the ability to take business practices and really apply them to a social issue. So we are a private institution, started out as a private institution that took on a social problem that government couldn't do by itself. So I'd say if there's something that you really care about, take the leap of faith and do it.
It was worth it for you.
Absolutely.
How many people do you have working for you now?
We have over 200 employees. That doesn't include our staffing services, which also employ people with businesses that hire people from our organization.
Very quickly, Ben Carson has been named to lead HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Agency. Where do you think the government can help?
Well, The government really needs to think, I think, in terms of sustainability and in terms of breaking the cycle of poverty and homelessness. I think the idea of public housing was meant to be temporary as a transitional way to get back on your feet and into permanent housing. And somehow, that idea got away from us and it turned into a chronic or generational housing solution. And I think Housing First is a model that needs some work, and I think he's going to have an opportunity to really reinvent that system and think about what that looks like in a way that leads to sustainable independence long term.
Thank you so much, Nellie Vasquez Rowland. And the organization is called A Safe Haven. That does it for us for this evening. For the EWTN News Nightly team here in Washington, D.C., I'm Lauren Ashburn. Good night, and God bless you.